Welcome back to another episode, Life with Your Dog. Thanks for joining us once again. I've got an episode that I want to release today that I did say in way back in like episode 30 somewhere that we're going to talk about redirected aggression. So today we're going to define it, likelihood of occurrence and when will it normally happen, and also situations of how we can try to limit this form of aggression. So redirected aggression is when a dog is faced, generally when he's faced with a form of threat. So let's say he is aggressive towards other dogs, and he sees a dog up across the road, and he gets so riled up, and he's starting to get overly aroused and reach that threshold. And usually when the redirected aggression occurs is when the dog starts to get too close, and the dog starts to get really affected by that. And normally, if we were to put pressure on the lead, or if the dog was to get too close, like even closer to after your dog's lunging and barking, as that dog gets a little bit closer, that your dog can then turn onto its owner or the closest thing to them and then bite them. So two ways that would occur if using the same sort of scenario: walking down the street, dog's starting to walk past, your dog's lunging and growling, lunging and barking, and then your dog turns onto you and bites your leg, or turns onto, if you're walking two dogs, and then turns onto the other dog and then bites them. But it's nothing personal in those moments. Redirected aggression is how it was taught to me, was when adrenaline raises too high in the dog system, where the dog's eyes just glaze over and the closest thing to them gets bitten. They bite it. So, for example, I'll give another different example. You could be standing in front of your house with your dog on the lead, and your dog then sees, we'll use another dog as an example, so sees a dog coming out from the neighbor's yard, so very close proximity, which stimulates your dog to get overly aroused. And then nothing's happening on the lead. Your dog's hitting at the end of it, whether he's lunging towards a dog or if he's barking. And then you go to grab the collar or put pressure on the leash, and the dog then reacts really quickly and boom, goes right towards your leg, bites your arm or whatever. I saw this redirected aggression occur also when I was working at the shelter. There was a cattery within this shelter, and part of the dog's assessment would mean that I would take the dog around other dogs, big dogs, small dogs, and through the two gates. I just want the dog to see the other cats and to see what their reaction was. So I never put the cat too close to the dog, obviously. And there was one time I took a dog real close up, and it was a really busy time for the cattery at that time, and there was an overpopulation, so there was many cats in there. And when the first cat that spotted the dog would, fluff up, tail went up really erect, and then went closer towards the gate. And then there was another one that took notice of us, and then it started to come up close. And what happened was, I wasn't there for very long. This all happened within 15 seconds or something. Was that second cat bumped up against the original cat that first saw the dog, and then the cat just turned around, swiped it. The cat then reacted back, and then half the cattery's worth of cats started to fight amongst each other. And it was really difficult for me because I wanted to go in there and stop it, but I had a dog on the lead. So obviously one of my staff luckily was real close. She ran in and we just stopped it. No one got injured, no one got hurt. But that was a classic example of redirected aggression, was that the cat was feeling threatened by the dog, and if there was no gates, the cat would have either run or strike the dog on the face. Where now that cat had nothing personal against the other cat in that moment, because those cats coexist happily together all the time. It was that when they were faced with this direct threat. Another example, a human example of redirected aggression, could be when your best friends are fighting, for example. So it's a proper fight, and then you come to stop the fight. So you grab your friend, and then your friend, just out of a sheer reaction, elbows you in the face. And that's happened personally to me when I saw a couple of old friends back at school when in the middle of it to break it up, and I copped a flurry of hits. And none of them wanted to hurt me. So it was nothing personal. This isn't merely aggression. The redirected part of this aggression is the most important part. So likelihood of occurrence would be, a lot of the time it's when you're breaking up a fight. So if you're going to break up two dogs when they're fighting, you have to have in the front of your head, in front of your mind rather, that you may get bitten in this altercation. So if you're going to jump in to stop it, be prepared that you may get bitten, and then there's a whole different set of protocols to follow in that sort of situation. While the dog's on the lead can be another reason why. It's because we've um, given the dog less options. When the dog's on the lead, there's nowhere for him to go. So what happens is that's when the dog's panic starts to set in, especially if the dog's coming, like if that stimulus is then proceeding to come closer towards him, he gets more into a panic. He then starts to react and then potentially show more aggression. But then as soon as I put pressure on the lead, or sometimes when a dog gets a leash correction in the wrong time, that's when the dog can turn and bite. So one of my clients recently was walking, then her dog gets really anxious and can be good around some dogs, but then other dogs was really, really protective for itself, right? It wasn't protecting the owner in this case. So as they were walking past, they'd walked past like 7, 8, 10 dogs before, and then this one time as they were walking past, the dog hit the end of the lead to bite the dog walking past it, and then as soon as it hit the end of the lead, boom, it went back and then bit my owner on the ass. So these things can happen too. And again, it's a risk. There's a factor to you getting hurt and bitten, but just remember, and when it happens, as the dog's owner, you can be really upset. You can be really triggered by it. So just know that it's a potential risk of dealing with your dog around a certain stimulus, but also we need to have a bit of a protocol of what to do. Dogs can also show redirected aggression with pain. Now, I was careful about adding this in because, of course, if the dog's leg's sore and you touch the sore leg, the dog may just bite you because its leg is sore. But sometimes if the dog's in pain and is in another similar situation, is feeling stressed, nervous, or, potentially aggressive, what could happen is if you do touch a sore part of the dog's body, he can then quickly bite onto you just as a sheer reaction of it. So be mindful if your dog has used his teeth before to get what he wants, and not just by playing tug or by eating, by actually showing forms of aggression and social correction, so to speak. Make sure that you're really understanding of how to make sure that you're safe while trying to deal with your dog. While on the lead, it's a real big one, right? So we've spoken about this before in terms of when a dog's feeling threatened and fear aggression starts to set in. If a lot of the times, if the dog had space to walk away and to make its own space around the stimulus, i.e. a dog coming close or a person coming into their personal space, if the dog has the ability to walk away on its own and create some space, flight, then the dog may not have to go into a fight state of mind and then try to bite. So while we put a dog on a lead, we've restricted a lot of their natural behaviors, so they can't make space when they're feeling threatened, but also their body language starts to change. If I'm walking down the street with my dog that's scared of other dogs, and then there's another dog, like a Labrador, for example, walking closer to us, and that dog's pulling on a harness, for example, that body language changes. Chest starts to point out forward, head is out in front, probably panting really hard because he's hot and he's walking. His tail may be up and erect. So if a dog with limited social skills, or that's had a bad experience around dogs, or a lack of experience, they may perceive that body language as different than what it actually is. And while dogs are on the lead, where there's a lot more of a likelihood of an attack to occur, or for redirected aggression to occur. So today I want to give like two sort of remedies, or a kind of a step-by-step of what to do while the dog's on the lead, and then when two dogs are fighting. That could be a quick little breakdown of it. And then we could probably use other episodes in the future to go more into aggression specifically. I'm a little bit hesitant to give too much aggression advice because it's so different between dog to dog, situation to situation. Every circumstance is different. So if we give a blanket rule about, hey, this is how you deal with this and this is how you stop it, I'm just afraid that people try it too without any professional eyes and physical help, where things can go wrong. And of course, aggression is a dangerous behavior. So while the dog's on the lead, the best thing to do before working on your behavior modification program and working on all that is knowing how to use your leash. So if you're walking down the street, same situation, the dog's coming close to you, right now, best thing to do is just make some space around that dog. Make sure that your dog's conditioned to having leash pressure on, and this is a big one. So things that you can do is, this is not around another dog, but just in the background while you're at home and on your general training sessions, is showing your dog leash pressure and what that means. Leash pressure means when you have your dog on the collar, or if it's on a harness, if that's the way you like to go, I put a bit of pressure onto that harness, and the pressure in this circumstance is for the dog to move in the direction of the pressure, not to fight it. There's a natural reaction that we have called opposition reflex. When pressure goes against our body, we tend to put pressure back against it. So when the dog's got a flat collar on, really low down on his neck, and hasn't been taught how to walk on a lead, he'll tend to, when he feels pressure going onto the collar, onto the harness, they tend to lean into it. And that sort of opposition reflex can hinder us when we're out on the walk as well. So you have your dog on the collar, you have your high value food with you, you're standing still, you're not moving in this one, in this instance. Put a little bit of pressure. Out of 10, 10 being the hardest, 1 being the softest, I'd probably put like a 3 out of 10 if your dog can tolerate that. Hold that pressure on, and to help them out, you put your food in front of the dog's nose and you lure them towards you. As soon as they take a few steps in the direction of the leash pressure, you release the pressure and then give the marker yes immediately, and then give food. Pressure goes on, the dog takes a step or two in that direction, release the pressure, that's the most important, and then reward. Look on Nooch's Pooch's YouTube channel, type in the name game, and that talks a little bit about, go into a lot more detail in terms of how leash pressure can really help us, especially for your strong, powerful dogs. So if we can work on some leash pressure, like over time, you'll be taking a few steps back, say the dog's name, the dog looks in your direction, and then starts walking towards you, you release the pressure and reward. With that leash pressure, if you can just show the dog we're moving to the left, the dog follows the leash pressure to the left, reward, and then going to the right. Making sure pressure going on means move in this direction. When the pressure goes away, the dog's done the right thing, and that is perceived to the dog as a reinforcement. It's called negative reinforcement. The pressure going away, the negative part of the equation, is reinforcing. It feels good. It doesn't mean that the dog feels pain when the pressure's on. He just feels that force, and that becomes more of a guiding force rather than a stopping force. Because a lot of the times we put pressure on, so then the dog can stop going in that direction. But then when he's showing intensity one way, you show intensity the other way, we have conflict. So if you can teach the dog what leash pressure is, then hopefully that can translate when you're out and about walking. You're walking, the dog pops out from a driveway 2 houses up, your dog gets triggered, bit of pressure towards you, and then moving in the opposite direction. And then, look, your dog may be so triggered he may not want food, but at least when he does start walking in the direction you want, you can release that pressure. If pressure on the collar and the harness becomes a neutral thing, it becomes slightly positive, and then over time we want it to be actual communication, your dog won't be super conflicted in that moment. Again, this isn't a hard, fast rule that's going to work for everybody, but remember what it is that we want our dogs to do when we do start giving them communication, whether it's verbal, leash pressure, or whether it's with luring and gestures. So, and then also when breaking up a fight. Now, there's so many different levels of breaking up fights, and then how do we even avoid fights, etc. But in terms of breaking up the fight in the moment, just be aware that we tend to go straight for the dog's face and collar when the dogs are biting each other. And or it could happen that, so another example was when I had a friend, I told him not to go to the dog park. He bloody took his dog to the dog park. The American Staffy jumped onto the Husky's back and bit the back of the collar. And the Husky was tripping balls. And then when he came and the owner came to break it up, that Husky was just chomping away at anything that it saw, anything that it could bite, it bit. Because think about it, in survival, if you can bite anything, you're going to get out of danger's way. So he had scars and stitches all over his arms trying to break up this dog fight, him and the owner of the Husky. So it wasn't that the Husky was pissed off with him. It was that he just didn't know what he was doing. He's just in a flurry. And you see that with drunk people as well. You try to hold them down, they're just wailing. Even if it's their mum trying to hold them down, they're just not themselves. They've gone into that primal mode, and they're just survival mode basically. So a few quick tips about breaking up a fight is, if you are going to go for the collar, make sure that you're ready for the aftermath. And remember, when a dog goes to bite you from grabbing their collar or anywhere on their body, it's a quick movement. So make sure that you're safe. And even coming from behind and grabbing the dog's knees and doing the wheelbarrow, so lifting the dog's legs up and then kind of driving him into the ground. As soon as that dog lets go, because he may get a panic of being grabbed by the back legs, and ideally that two people are doing this. So two people come in for the wheelbarrow technique, not grabbing the paws, the back paws, you're grabbing the knees. You don't want to pull the ligaments. You grab the legs, you lift them up, and a lot of the times when the dogs feel that sensation, if it happens in sync, the dogs may just be unsure of what's happening, and then they let go to look at what's been grabbing them. Because think about it, in their mind, there could be another dog coming from behind and biting them for all they know. So as soon as that happens, you can like swing the dogs around, and then hopefully you can get. Or another way could be with your leash, if the dogs, again, we're talking about milliseconds here, but bear with me and kind of get my perspective, is that while the dogs are fighting, let's just say they've grabbed onto each other, maybe grabbing a lead, attaching it to a collar, or putting the lead up underneath their neck and then making it a slip lead, putting it through the loop, the other end of the lead. So then that way then there's a slip lead on, and that way then you got a bit of space between you and the dog. So when trying to pull them off, or if you have to choke the dogs off, you can do that. And then if he lets go and he wants to redirect, then at least you've got that lead there. So making sure that if you're going to break up that fight, you've got a couple of people there, and of course, manage the situation, try not to let it happen, blah, blah, blah. We get that. But really, really important is in the moment there, be clear-minded. Don't just jump in trying to wedge the dog's mouth open, because it may not work either. So even while you're on the lead and you're walking and your dog does hit the end of the lead and he has a tendency of looking back towards you, making sure that you can make space between you and the dog with your lead, and trying to not put your dog into those sort of situations. I know that you can't always be avoided, but part of a behavior modification plan is working on good leash handling, giving your dog a job so he can follow basic commands, and then of course working on all the ins and outs on dealing with the actual cause of the problem, building confidence, and showing your dog that they have to follow you, and etc., etc. We can go through all of that in another episode, but today's really important about knowing what the aftermath of every behavior could be. Just like, for example, in human context, someone grabs you, and then you decide, oh yeah, if someone grabs me, I'll grab their wrist and then I'll punch them. And then let's say you have a killer punch, you give him a good left hook, boom, and then he lets go. As in terms of self-defense, you've got to think, what's the aftermath of not only what will he do in reaction to that, but also where does he fall for you to be able to follow up. So, or for example, the aftermath, thinking about the psychology within human behavior, and then that for us humans, this isn't redirected, but it's always about having an aftermath, is that if you have some road rage incident and, for example, my car is just wrapped with all my logos and stuff on it, is that my actions today may not be for the next 2 seconds, and maybe that 3 months later that person recognizes the car and then something happens. So there's an aftermath for every behavior that we do. In the moment of redirected aggression and bringing that back, is that the consequence and the outcome, the aftermath, is within 0.3 to 0.5 of a second. Dogs move really quickly when they're under that sort of adrenaline rush. So make sure that you're calm and composed. If you do get bitten, make sure that you still try to keep on the plan of what you're doing, because you don't want the incident to get worse. But usually when redirected aggression occurs, it's normally a quick bite and a release. It's generally they grab and then they start to shake and hold. Certainly it can happen, but depending on the dog and the severity of the situation. But a lot of the time it's a quick strike and let go. But don't be fooled. A quick bite from a dog hurts, and talking from experience, I can't tell you how many times I've been bitten. And a lot of the times, I wouldn't say a lot of the times, but quite frequently it was from redirected aggression. I'm a lot quicker now, so I can see when things like that happen, so I can move my arm out on the lead while I move my legs back, making sure that you're wearing the right equipment as well. If you do know that your dog can bite you and has been redirecting onto you, make sure that you're wearing like loose, sort of not too baggy, but baggy pants can really help, because when a dog goes to bite, or if you're going to wear, if you're a professional in the industry and you're out working, sometimes wearing longer sleeves that are not skin tight but a little bit baggy, because usually a dog goes to grab the material, like the closest thing. So usually they grab material, where if you're wearing tights and a dog goes to bite your leg, like they're biting your leg, right? And they say that about, when I did a survival course, and when you're out bush, never to be wearing shorts. I wasn't allowed to wear shorts on that whole 5 days. And so I had to wear long pants, and I used the cargo sort of jeans material. for snake bites, because a snake will strike for the closest thing, which would be your pants. And if there's a bit of bagginess, then they're going to sink their teeth into that. Where if you're obviously got your bare skin or something too tight, they can get it. So management, and in the background, work on some leash handling, work on some leash pressure techniques, and then be aware of if your dog is in pain or if there is going to be a fight, that you have a bit of a plan involved. And hopefully anyone that gets bitten, remember, any bite isn't just a bite in the moment. You may not get a crushed arm, you may not you may not even get too many stitches, but you can get infected. And when I got bitten, I not only did I have to take cartilage out of my finger, my cartilage of my knuckle joint, but also my fingernail got cracked in half, and they had to remove that. But what got me into hospital was that my finger was infected, and it could have gone into my blood or my bones, they said, which can be fatal. So there's aftermaths of the bite as well. So making sure that you treat that well, and make sure you're on top of it. Now, if you know that your dog redirects, last thing, he's talking about muzzle conditioning. Teach your dog how to wear a muzzle. Soon I'm going to put a video together talking about muzzle conditioning and how to do that. But look that up. There's many different resources out there talking about how to properly teach your dog how to wear a muzzle. And wearing a muzzle will obviously protect the other people and protect yourself when you're dealing with an aggressive dog. So and remember, a redirected aggression isn't, oh, I went to go grab his toy and he bit me. That's resource guarding. Or redirected aggression isn't because you touched his sore leg and after he's growling and snarling at you for touching it, he bit you. Like, that's different. Redirected aggression is while they're in the zone, locked into that behavior, staring at the stimulus, and then we come and interfere one way or another, and that dog just boom, quickly comes and bites us. So making sure that you're treating the actual cause of the aggression and not just the redirected part of it. Hope that all makes sense, and hope I didn't go into too many tangents there. I really appreciate you guys listening. Always, try to give us a rating or a review on the platform that you're listening to us, and share it with a friend, because that always does help. And if there's any questions, send them our way. And until next time, keep training your dogs. Have a good day, and much love to you all. Thank you.